Hey everyone, this is Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein a little bit more. I'm pretty sick of talking about Jeffrey Epstein, although it's an important topic. We keep getting little threads of new information, and I want to make sure that you guys are kept up to date with what's going on. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to get all of our latest content. Remember, you can't allow Facebook and YouTube to block you out of what's going on and what work I'm doing. I need you to follow on Minds, on Steemit, join our Discord channel. Sign up for our text list. This is probably the single most effective way to follow my work, and none of you do it. I mean, if I had more of you on there, we could be bypassing social media and communicating without them, but you won't do it. Maybe today you will. You can also follow on BitChute, and if you want to support, you can do so via Patreon or Subscribestar, and also sign up to our email newsletter. And if you want to get a free ounce of Kratom or check out some CBD, go to our supporters, My Brave Botanicals. Okay, so first off, Courthouse News Service reporting yesterday, Florida newspaper seeks grand jury records from Epstein case. A South Florida newspaper is demanding grand jury records from Jeffrey Epstein's criminal case in the hope that the documents will shed light on the role the Sunshine State prosecutors played in sidestepping a long prison term. This is, of course, referring to the original charges that were brought against Jeffrey Epstein in 2005. We all know that he was given that sweetheart deal in 2008. Part of that deal was crafted by Alexander Acosta, who's now the former labor secretary who was appointed by Donald Trump. But there were other people involved in this, and we know some of the names of some of the attorneys and people involved, but we want to find out more details. And so the Palm Beach Post claims in a complaint filed Thursday in court that the release of testimony, grand jury testimony, and other evidence from 2006 grand jury proceedings will confirm whether Palm Beach County prosecutors gave Epstein favorable treatment after he was accused of engaging in sexual activity with dozens and dozens of minors. Now, we already know the story. We don't need to rehash or recover the story, but as I said, Alexander Acosta, former labor secretary who was the federal prosecutor in Florida at the time, was a part of helping Epstein get this sweetheart deal. And also, you may remember that Alexander Acosta, when he was questioned about this during Congress, he did say that Epstein had intelligence connections and that he was told that it was like above his pay grade and for him to kind of back off and just stay away. So there's that. The Palm Beach Post lawsuit maintains that it was not just federal prosecutors who were going easy on Epstein, as the saga played out more than a decade ago. As the Post recounts, Barry Krischer, this is another important name if we're doing a whiteboard or a web of people's names and people involved. You've got Alexander Acosta, of course Epstein, Barry Krischer, these are the people who helped cover it up. The Palm Beach County State Attorney at the time, who chose not to pursue a multi-charge case against Epstein, even after local detectives identified more than 15 victims and prepared a detailed probable cause affidavit which chronicled an underage sex ring Epstein organized at his mansion. And in May 2006, then Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder, who is one of the people still trying to get people to bring Epstein and his co-conspirators to justice, apparently sick of non-responsiveness from state attorney offices, wrote a letter to Barry Krischer, who is again the Palm Beach County State Attorney, suggesting that Krischer should be removed from Epstein prosecution. The letter referenced the, quote, unusual course that Krischer's office was taking in handling the prosecution. Krischer convened a grand jury in July 2006, so May 2006, the Palm Beach police chief is complaining, and then by July, Krischer's like, you know what, let's keep this all a secret, let's do grand jury, and because that's what happens when a grand jury is convened. We don't get to know about the evidence or what exactly took place, what was said, what was brought forward, and, that's one way that authorities can sort of claim that they're doing something good and they're investigating something, but at the same time get away without revealing any details, and it's always something to be very weary of. The jury came back with a single charge of soliciting prostitution. Obviously, like I just said, they convene a grand jury and all of a sudden the jury comes back with one single charge, everything else is dismissed. And more than likely, what the records would show is that Barry Krischer, instead of presenting all the available evidence, only brought enough evidence where there was a single charge of soliciting prostitution, and whoever was involved in that grand jury had no idea, likely, that there were more charges and accusations against Epstein. The newspaper's lawsuit says that grand jury records will show the extent to which Krischer and Assistant State Attorney Lana Belohalovic, there's another name to add to our web of people who covered this up, undercut and downplayed their own access against Epstein. The lawsuit states, quote, access to the grand jury materials will allow the public to determine whether the grand jury process and the secrecy that comes with it was used to further justice or instead operated to shield Epstein and his co-conspirators from the consequences of their criminal activities. The newspaper asserts that in spite of the ever-mounting number of victims who are coming forward, only a single youth testified before the grand jury, a 14-year-old girl. Another teenager was scheduled to testify against Epstein, but she was unable to attend due to school obligations. So think about this. Even in the case where a grand jury comes back with a single charge of soliciting prostitution, if the freaking victim is a 14-year-old girl, it's called child trafficking, it's child rape, pedophilia, these kinds of things. It's not just, a single charge of prostitution. So even that, the grand jury was still full of shit, even if that was the only charge they can come back with. The Post claims and that the release of the records will show whether Belahovic self-sabotaged the case against Epstein during the grand jury proceedings by bringing up a victim's unflattering social media posts. And that's what we had heard, and that's what I talked about in the documentary Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, that they talked about how some of the victims, had pictures with showing their ass and some flashy clothes on MySpace and just bullshit like that they were trying to just tarnish their character and say, look, they're basically sluts. Look at them. They're not victims. They're out there showing their ass to anybody who, sees their MySpace page. So I will keep an eye on this and see what goes on. The complaint is right here. I'll put the link below for those who actually want to read the full complaint. And that's kind of one of the latest news. The other thing I want to throw out to you, if you haven't heard, I know a couple channels have covered this already, but in case you haven't heard, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, spoke to the Miami Herald, Julie Brown, and said that he wasn't trafficking women and that he didn't kill himself. So what he means by that, just, this is not a super long article. And again, if you've heard the Jeffrey Epstein story, a lot of it's just same old thing. But this guy right here, Mark Epstein, says that he believes that his brother had been involved with young girls, but then when he got out, he had reformed himself and he wasn't messing with underage girls anymore. He says that most of the girls that are coming forward were 18 to 20, and so that, Epstein wasn't involved in that anymore. He says, quote, Jeffrey and I were not that close. We shared brother stuff, but I was not involved in what he was doing. When he first got in trouble, he called me. We were very straight with each other. I wasn't going to lecture him. Now, Mark Epstein also has an interesting history. He got into the art world and he worked for Cooper Union, or he went to Cooper Union and New York City. And, just like I said, connections to the art world. He was an art collector, things of this sort. And also, I will say, one of the apartment buildings in New York City that is under his name was identified by some of the girls as being a place that they were trafficked to, and that, or at least, that Epstein had used it. Nobody's come forward that we know of and said that Mark Epstein was involved as well. But I'm just saying, Mark Epstein here is saying he has nothing to do with it, but the fact of the matter is that at least a few of the girls have said that they did spend time in his apartment building and they were trafficked there. Mark says after his brother was released from jail in 2009, he reformed himself. Mark says to his knowledge, his brother didn't do anything illegal with other girls or women at that time. He points out that most of the women coming forward with allegations post-2009 were women who were 18 and older. Do I think that it was inappropriate for him at age 50 or 60 to be with women who were 18 or 20? Yes, but it certainly wasn't illegal and it wasn't sex trafficking. And they do get into here how recently Dr. Michael Baden, who we've talked about, is kind of a controversial and maybe shady figure himself, has come forward and said that he does not believe that this could have been suicide, and he thinks it's more consistent with murder. And another noted forensic pathologist who reviewed his findings, Dr. Cyril Wecht, said that same thing, that his injuries were more consistent with manual strangulation than hanging. And I hadn't heard this theory before, but it says that their opinions, combined with the fact that New York City medical examiner Barbara Simpson has not released a full report on the investigation, have fueled widespread conspiracy theories that began almost immediately when he was found in his cell, allegedly on his knees with a sheet fashioned into a ligature. So I didn't realize he was on his knees, and I guess, that's the thing is they're saying he tied the sheet around his neck into the post of the bed and then fell to his knees as quick as possible, and that killed. I mean, it's just ridiculous, guys. Come on. Baden said Epstein had been dead for several hours and his body should not have been moved. Emergency personnel transported him from federal jail in downtown Manhattan. He was present at the autopsy, which was conducted the next day by medical examiner Kristen Roman. Both he and Roman agreed that the cause and manner of death was not clear, so she designated it pending further investigation. However, 5 days later, Barbara Sampson, New York City medical examiner, said that the cause of death was suicide by hanging. So, add another name to the list. We have these names back here from covering up for Epstein back in 2005, 2006 era. And then we have this Barbara Sampson medical examiner is likely involved in some kind of cover-up. And And Mark Epstein himself says that he thinks that Epstein was murdered because of the people he knows. And basically he says that, also Michael Baden and Mark Epstein both say that, they haven't done a full report. They haven't actually interviewed anybody else. Baden says it's amazing how much information you can get by interviewing the prisoners in the nearby cell. Would the FBI have interviewed them if they thought it was a suicide? Mark Epstein, while not providing details, but believes that there were people who wanted his brother dead. He is concerned that his own life and the lives of other people may be in jeopardy because federal authorities have not fully probed the circumstances under which Jeffrey Epstein died. Jeffrey knew a lot of stuff about a lot of people, he says. So, yeah. Again, Cooper Union is where Mark went to, as well as Jeffrey Epstein. And he gives a little background history of saying Jeffrey was just a genius, and although he didn't have a degree, he was able to achieve great things. And for those who want to know more, I'll post a couple links in here. Here's a Business Insider from a few months back. Everything we know about Jeffrey Epstein's brother Mark, who almost inherited the financier's $500 million estate. There he is. There's another one here from Art News. Jeffrey Epstein's Art World Connections, a guide. And then also I want to remind you guys that I did this recently. Forget Epstein, let's find Jean-Luc Brunel. And I do think Jean-Luc Brunel is an extremely important piece of this. In fact, I was just watching this little piece here. It's a 45-minute piece from 60 Minutes Australia, which, by the way, 60 Minutes Australia happens to do some good work periodically. Don't expect them to go super deep, but if you want a good rehashing of the Epstein story, plus interview with Epstein's victims and talk of Prince Andrew, and also discussing the fact that we don't know where Ghislaine Maxwell is or Jean-Luc Brunel. They do bring them up, so it's not just totally surface level. Here's Brunel right there with Maxwell. Those are the two people we need to find, and I'm glad to see people are still asking these questions because that's where I've been directing it to. One last little point I'll throw in. You might have seen this, that Syria's Assad also in a recent interview said Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself. So the meme has gotten so far that even the president of Syria is saying, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. I hope nobody over there in the U.S. is buying that. Unfortunately, they seem to be. So Florida newspapers seeking grand jury records from Epstein case. Hopefully will reveal the cover-up and more people who should be held accountable. Epstein's brother saying he did not kill himself and that his own life is in danger. And according to him, that Epstein was not trafficking underage women after he got out of prison. You can look up all those art connections yourself for the Epsteins. And then, of course, Syria's president saying, Epstein didn't kill himself. Don't fall for it. So lots of new things. I hope you guys will check out the links. And I want to remind you again that if you support the deep dives I've been doing and the work I've been doing on Epstein, because I'll remind you, our documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, came out in November 2018, late October, before people were asking these questions, before the Miami Herald was even doing this deep dive. We weren't the first ones to report on it, but we were the first ones to put it into a concise documentary that explained everything and broke it down. So if you want to help me out and continue our efforts to keep reaching people, please do invest in the Conscious Resistance Network. This is not a donation. My hands are not out begging. This is an investment, investing in the next documentaries I'm working on, my 5G documentary, my How to Escape the Technocratic State book, as well as an update Finders documentary and an update Jeffrey Epstein documentary that I'll tell you all about very soon. But I can't do that with no money and no ability to pay an editor and to pay myself. So if you want that to happen, I'm going to need you to invest. So invest in real media, invest in the Conscious Resistance Network. And until next time, my friends, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.